matching stage, okay, and then the decision stage. So if you look at a video, okay, so at this website, I have do a transcript. So the video say 3 stages, like I say, okay, the input stage first, then second matching stage, and the third one the decision stage. So let's look at the input stage. Collecting all necessary information, including external or internal factor evaluation metrics, okay, and the CPM. Okay, that is the initial stage. So for this stage, very important, you must collect all the data, as much data as possible. Okay, next, you come to the matching stage, the second stage. So you will generate the feasible alternative strategy. Okay, so what it means is that there are maybe a lot of various alternatives strategy that you can do. Okay, so which is the best strategy for you? So you need to match the strategy versus the external internal factors. So the first stage, you get all the IE, internal factor, or the EF. So when you get all this ready, okay, then you look at, you want to have some strategies because of the IE and the EF, because IF and EF. Then you have a few strategies, then which strategy is aligned with what you find in the internal factor or external factor or in the CPM. So you match. Then the last stage is you decide. So you may have many strategies in stage 2. Then you select the best one. So how do you select? A lot depending on your resources. Okay. So you select which one you think is okay. So there are various type of metrics to use. Okay. I personally prefer the IE, but you can use the Boston group, or you can use the SWOT method. Okay. So they identify your internal weakness and strengths and external opportunities. Okay. So that's called the strategy formulation. Evaluate the importance of a comprehensive strategy evaluation framework. You should have a framework, because if you don't have framework, you don't know step 1 to do what, step 2 to do what, or step 3 to do what. Okay. So why is it important? So let's check 6.1. The important having a framework is it guides you to make your decision. You got step 1, then step 2 linking to step 1, then step 3 linking to step 2. So all these steps you are making or you're doing guides your decision making process. Okay. Identify opportunities and threats, and you can also add out maybe identify your strengths and weaknesses. Okay. You can recognize new opportunity and address potential threats also. Then finally, in the third part, when you're choosing it, you will check your resources and only select those strategies that is in line with your resources that you have right now, or align with resources that you can get in the future. Okay, what are the resources? Finance, personnel, time. These are all the resources. So what I want you to do for 6.1, assess the comprehensive framework, visual a step by step for creating. So I want you to assess it, whether 1, 2, 3, is it correct or not correct, how good it is. Okay. So now I want to look at 6.2, the cultural aspect. When you're making strategy, you're making strategy for a company. In the company, there are many, many people, and there are many, many types of culture. So sometimes you may have a strategy in after formulation, but when you try to implement, you may have a problem because of the culture involved. Okay, so if you know your organization, for example, your organization, your culture may be top down. Therefore, when you implement the strategy, you must implement based on top down. But if your culture is based on bottom up, when you implement the strategy, you must convince the bottom people so they can uh, get more cooperative. Yeah, if yours is bottom up strategy. Okay. And then also different countries, different regions got different type of culture. Right. So let's say, for example, if your strategy say that you have to use a lot of uh, uh, resources, mineral resources. So you need to look at that particular country. Do they allow you to dig up? What kind of permits you need to dig out the minerals and so forth? So if you ignore cultural factor, you can lead to poor strategic choices. Why? Because the culture is always there. Of course, it does change, but it has a culture there. So if you don't consider the culture when you're selecting a strategy, you're asking for trouble. So let's look at it. Build a culture that supports strategic implementation. So let's say, for example, you have a mission, vision, and then you've done everything already, so you need a strategy. Now, so strategy will come to goals, but from culture side, you have to consider what the values. Then from goals come to objective. From culture side, using these objectives, what is our practices? And then from these other activities, and then for culture side will be the behavior. Now, anytime this is not linking, you are not going to have a good result. Okay? So you will see here the two side green arrow. One is the guiding part, guiding the what is need to be done. What is driving the success of all this is actually the driving part, the values, the practice, and the behavior. So let's look at the video. Organization culture. What is culture? Values, benefits, and behaviors that characterize an organization. Here is organization culture. A strong culture lead to increase employee engagement, loyalty, and overall success. Okay, so if you have not a very strong culture, you have a weak culture. So if a weak culture, employee will not be on board because everybody says, we can do whatever things we want to do. Okay, and if you have this kind of climate in your organization, people are not going to follow rules. They are not going to look at the KPIs. So you will lead to business unsuccessful. So you want to get increased employee engagement. You want to have more employees loyalty. So if you have this moving, then you have a good chance of overall business success. If your employees are disengaged, if your employees is disloyal, do you think you can get business success? Analyze the impact of culture on an organization strategic choices. Okay? The impact of culture on the strategy that the company will select. That's what it's asking for. So let's look at 6.2 now. Analyze the impact of culture. So what is the impact of culture that we have? Culture can shape decision making because they influence how leaders and employees make decisions, guiding their strategic choices based on shared value and beliefs within the organization. That's number one. Number two, culture affects risk taking. Now, some organization culture, maybe it's an old organization, they are worried about taking risks. So some of the strategy will be not so aggressive strategy, very low, stable strategies. But if it's a new company and the people down there want to a bit of entrepreneurial spirit, sometimes they will take risks. So a young company may do strategies that are risky, okay? But the return is maybe you can get more profit compared with the first one, the slow moving one. So culture influence employee behavior, how they work together and support strategic goals. A positive culture better lah than a negative culture. Okay? So what should we do about 6.2? Look at your own company. Look at your own company. Look at the culture in your own company. The strategies that come out from your own company, will the strategy be affected by the culture? Let's say your strategy should consider the values of the society or the organization. Let's say, for example, if your organization culture is to green earth, sustainability, no climate change, no pollution, obviously the strategies that you select will not go against this type of culture or thinking. Okay? So now we go to 6.3, the politics of strategic choice. Now, what do you mean by politics? Different departments or different individuals have competing interests. Like for example, HR may be interested in getting expensive but good labor. But they will be in competing with the production side because it will be expensive to build a product. Operating department may be interested in buying cheaper parts. But it will be in conflict with the production department because the parts is not so good quality, a lot will be broken and need to be replaced. So we buy more for spoilage. We need to replace spoilage. So there are different politics running around in the organization. Some may not be by department, some may be by person. Some people are blue-eyed boys. The boss always listen to them, so they will get the biggest budget and the lowest KPI. Some the boss don't like. So you will get the toughest strategies to do with very little resources. So this politics. Okay. So in many small company whereby the founder is succeeded by is going to be succeeded by the son. So the son is a blue-eyed boy. So he got a power to move his father to select the strategies that is beneficially to the son himself. Okay, let's say for example, we have a company with a strategy to buy something. They cannot make, they have to buy outside. So they can come to politics with it. Should I buy this thing from my own father company? Or I do an open tender and select the supplier with the cheapest cost? Politics. Can we escape politics? No. Why not? Because we are all human beings. The question is not to avoid or kill off politics. Solution is how to manage it. Okay? To manage the impact of politics. As much as possible, our decisions should not be based on politics. Okay? That is in theory. But in practice, politics always come into play. So we need to manage it as best as we can. And sometimes politics is not just one person. He get a group of person together, his own gang, his own clique. And they will have certain demands. Another group of people will join together, will have a different demand or expectation. So that's why they all try to bring in more power for their own group. We'll look at the video right now. It's called Organizational Politics. And what we learn from this video is like that. The video says that organizational politics often come from competition for resources or recognition for the department or the person. Okay, so the company don't have enough resources. So if you want to, if you are making shoes and another department is making mineral water, sometimes you find among yourself to get limited resources. Okay, so people are grouping together. So when people go together, sometimes they become dangerous because they will ask, they will demand for unnecessary things or unwise things. So politics is natural. We are human beings. What is not natural is excessive politicking. Every day, somebody will bring a political issue. So the climate is not really friendly for okay? So people get problems. Now, we have a code of conduct is written down. But sometimes there are certain things that's not written down. The unwritten rules that some people will follow. Okay. This also have to consider. So allow you to look at this one. Examine the role of internal politics strategy selection. 6.3. Let me see first, huh? No, not this soon. Examine the role of internal politics, so 6.3. So internal politics influence decision making to select which is the correct strategy. And internal politics slow down the process of decision making. People sometimes, so they voice their disagreement, they may go on strike and so forth. And also what, in fact, resource allocation. Whoever is a blue-eyed boy, maybe get more resources. Okay. Now, what I want to do in 6.3 is just evaluate the importance of political dynamics and cultural factors in strategic selection. The importance, we know it is important. I want you to evaluate how important. Okay, how important. So, let's think again. We have step one, getting the data. Step two, we will make a few strategy based on the data that was received. Step three, we formulate or select the final strategies. Now, once you finish training the strategy, you just implement. No, because even before you formulate the final policy, you need to look at politics. So to select the step three, to select the final objective or goals, they have to look at the culture. They have to look at the politics power in the government. Then only we can make a final decision. So not necessary the best strategy will be chosen in step two. Step three, before they choose a final, they will have to select look at the culture and also the politics. Then maybe we select strategy number second one, not the best one. Okay? Because it will be more easy to implement if the culture, if the strategy is in line with the culture or the strategy is in line with the politics of the people. Okay, now we look at the next one. The role of the board of directors. Who is in charge of strategy? In most companies, it is the responsibility of the board to choose and implement. Who makes the strategy for the board? Maybe the strategy planner or the CEO. So the CEO and the strategic planning manager, how do they do? Step one, step two, step three. And identify the roles of internal politics and also the role of culture. Then they will come up in the first step, the final strategy as recommended by the CEO. Now it's a board responsibility to go through the whole process and decide whether the strategy developed by the CEO is appropriate. Now, once the board of directors say go ahead, if something wrong, we look at the board of directors because they are the one who say okay. And then when we look at the board of directors, the board of directors look at the CEO. So the board of directors say, I have no play in making the strategy, I just approve. Right? But if you look at the CEO and say, oh, I need a strategy, I did not approve, board of directors approve. For something you got this type of conflict. So you have a conflict, but to think carefully, the shareholders give money to the company. Who is working on behalf of the shareholders? By right, the board of directors. And then the board of directors cannot do the actual job, they appoint the CEO. The CEO will appoint the CFO, the chief marketing officer, the chief HR officer, and so forth. Right? So based on that, from the point of view of the shareholders, they cannot be going after the people in the company, but they can go after the board of directors. And if the board of directors are not performing, the shareholders can vote in a new director and kick the old director away. So the success or not the success of the strategies is actually in the board of directors' hands. Okay. So they are supposed to guide the strategic direction of the company. Then they are also supposed to maintain that the strategy is being used. And then they will instruct the finance to come out the actual versus plan result. and instruct the strategic manager to change strategy if there is a need for. So beside that, what are the other jobs of the board of directors? Number one, strategic planning. Based on the recommendation of the CEO. Okay, so the board supposed to provide oversight and hold managers accountable. You see, the shareholders will hold the board of directors accountable. The board of directors will hold the CEO, senior management accountable. Okay, so what should be the role? Board of directors in holding the CEO accountable. Okay, the rules is they're supposed to do strategic management, consider risk management, financial oversight, make sure there's enough money, leadership succession. If one board of directors can retire, or the marketing manager is supposed to be retiring, or the GM of whatever QA, if they are supposed to be retiring, board of directors should have a succession plan. They employ outside and promote internally. Okay, they have to look at ethical standards and look at the stakeholder management. There are many stakeholders, the employee, the customer, the supplier, the government. The board of directors should be there to face the external party and give consistent voices and so forth. Okay, so that is where the stockholder management comes from. Let's look at the video. There are two types of board of directors. One is called the unitary, the other one is called the dual. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Unitary means one, so one single board, executive and non-executive directors to form the sitting inside the board of directors hall. They are also responsible for all aspects of the company activities, all aspects. And shareholders, if they don't like the board of directors, they can kick out the old one and bring in the new one at the annual general meeting. Okay, now the board of directors, later we have one chapter on the laws of board of directors. I think it's very interesting. But basically, what I want to say here, when there's a new company formed, who is the first board of directors? New company formed, we don't have much shareholders. We don't even have to call AGM. So the promoters of setting up this company normally will be the first batch of directors. Then they issue shares, then money comes in, then they will have a first annual general meeting. That's when the directors will be appointed. Okay, or be appointed, or the original director, some may be asked to leave because now the money is coming from the shareholders, and shareholders want to have a say. Okay, so let's look at the various types. One is the unitary board, one single board. Executive and non-executive directors are inside the board. What is executive? What is non-executive directors? Executive directors are workers, employees of the company. At the same time, they are directors of that. That's called executive director. So the salary for executive director is not considered salary. It's considered as director remuneration. Unless there's a contract of employment. When there's a contract of employment between a company and the executive director, that portion of money will be wages. Anything more than that need to be considered as director's evolution or remuneration, need to be passed in the AGM. That's called executive directors. They are basically employees of the company, senior people. What is non-executive directors? Those are directors that do not hold any position in the company. Sometimes we use the word independent. Why independent? They're not involved in the running of the company. So responsible for all aspects of the company activities, the shareholder will elect the directors. Normally, directors will be working for a few years, depending on the constitution of the company. And then, if possible, they may be re-elected. They also maybe got some conditions like an age limit and so forth. Okay? Now, this is called a unitary member. Now, we have another board Another type is called dual. Dual means two. Supervisory board, direction of business, and management board, running of business. You can have this type. Okay, it's not an issue. We have two types: supervisory board, direction of business, and management board, running of business. Okay, so the management board are most likely will be composed of all executive directors. So let's look at the video. The roles and responsibility of director and board. Two types of board: unitary and early board. The three important functions of a board of director. First, set the direction. The strategy actually don't come out from the board of director normally. They come out from the CEO, the strategic manager, recommend the direction to the board. Then the board select. That's where we call board set the direction of the strategies in the organization, because they select the strategy to be used. The second job is to be accountable to its stakeholders. The board has to answer to somebody. Like for example, the marketing clerk report to the marketing supervisor, who reports to the marketing manager, who reports to the general manager. So somebody report to somebody. Who does the board report to? So every year, board of directors come out the annual report. Inside down there, they got message to shareholders. They have an AGM meeting whereby the shareholders can ask the directors in person, and the directors must answer. Okay, so the board is accountable to the shareholders. Yeah. Shareholders want to come out the money to set up the business. Okay, so in law, the directors are appointed or can be sacked by the shareholders. So you have a very funny situation. Let's say one group of person is holding a lot of shares. So they appoint their friend or they appoint themselves as directors. And then this company go listed in the stock exchange. The shares are traded. And then when public people start to buy, suddenly the composition of the shareholders different. Then the new shareholders, they want to kick out the old board and bring in the new. So this matters a danger of public listed company. The shares sometimes must be held by important person who do not change the board of directors. They should have enough shares. Whoever want to control the board should have enough shares. That's all I want to say. Okay. If you have enough money, you buy shares that are public listed, you can take over the company. Because now you become the new majority shareholders. And as a majority shareholders, you go and do voting, of course you will win. Because you're a majority vote. Democracy. And then of course you can sack the directors. And bring in your own people. After you bring in your own people as a board of directors. The board of directors also, I don't like the CEO, I sack the CEO. The new board of directors say, I don't like the CFO, I sack the CFO. That's it. Simple as that. So, very be careful. If your company is publicly listed, suddenly you may be out of the business. Because somebody take over your business. Because they're now having more shares in your company. Okay? So anyway, the board appoints and oversees a group of qualified people to run the organization. What does that mean? It means that the board will appoint a CEO or MD, who in turn appoint all the other general managers, supervisor, task. So there is a control up to the board. Okay, this was we can say. So the key roles within a board include the chairperson, the chairman of the board, sometimes the CEO, organization secretary, and non-executive director. These are the kind of people inside the board of directors. So non-executive is independent. So maybe you got the CEO, which is the executive director. Okay. So we will now look at this one, 6.4. Evaluate the significance of the board of directors in shaping the organization strategy. How significant is the board of directors? 6.4. So the board of directors can guide strategic direction, can ensure accountability. Because that happen, we want to know. And board of directors always try to reduce risk now. Depending. Some company, they are young company, they will then take a lot of risk. So the strategy may be more risky, but have a potential to have more profit. A very slow moving, old fashioned company, they not like to take so much risk. So their strategies not so risky. Above the return will be lesser. Normally, higher the risk, the expected higher return. The lower the risk, expected lower returns. Okay. So that's the significance. So let's look at the what I want you to think about in this particular 6.4. Examine the essential function, the three functions, isn't it? So examine each of these functions, right? Just now I just say already, okay? And how do you know that in these three functions they are ensuring ethical practices? Okay, so you look at the annual report, they will justify one. Okay, the directors will justify what they are doing. Okay, so now it's a summary. Please go to yourself. Closing case, Sam Altman battle with his board of directors. So the CEO with the board of directors, case study. CEO of OpenAI. Do you know what's OpenAI? ChatGPT. Okay, so he is having a lot of problem with the board of directors. Okay, particularly the direction of the company. So the director want to go this way, the CEO say want to go another way. Okay, now why don't the director just set Sam Altman? In many cases, Sam Altman also hold shares as an individual. So he has got a voice in doing the voting. So some board of directors is also worried about their being voted out of the board of directors because Sam Altman holds shares. Okay. So some board is questioning his decision. So this prompted discussion about restructuring the board. Okay. So this case shows that it's very complicated to run a company. Okay, to run a company. Executive directors are running the company, but non-executive directors are not running the company. And sometimes they are in conflict. The directors are in conflict with the CEO. The CEO is not inside the board. The CEO maybe is the one who started the company long ago, or he got a lot of shares in the company, so he got a voice in the annual general meeting. So there's a lot of. So please try to answer. This is a key term. Let's look at the case study done already. Okay. I think that's all we have for this particular topic. We will do topic 7. Let's take a 5 minutes break. Okay. We'll come back in 5 minutes time. Okay, welcome back. Now we will do topic number 7. Okay, because so far we have done 6 chapters, or the introduction and then the formulation of the strategy. So the next step is, after we have formulated and selected the strategies, we have to implement it. So topic 7 is implementing strategy number 1. Now topic 8 will be implementing strategy number 2. Okay, so we will do this one first, implement strategy number 1. So you have a few of that, few items: nature of implementation, and objective and policies. I think it's a duplication, I'm sorry. Matching structure, restructuring, engineering, managing resistance to change, and create a strategy, supporting culture. Okay, so let's go ahead. So, number 1, the nature of implementation. Now you have got a strategy, you selected it, you want to implement it. So how do you go about doing that? Okay, so important thing, you need to communicate your strategy to everybody. Now, how to communicate? Because different levels of management have different type of skills. Okay, so maybe if you want to implement, you implement maybe at the business unit communication, and then let the business unit communicate to their managers, and then the managers will communicate to their lower levels. Okay, then we have to give the enough or effective allocation to the business unit so they can make the strategy, make the work. Okay, do the work. Then you need to coordinate among various departments, because no department can stand alone to do the strategy. And then finally you get a successful strategy implementation. So we need to make sure employees understand their roles. What do you mean by employees? So you've got higher level, lower level, junior level, clerical level, production operator level. So we must, each one of the people should understand what they are supposed to do to implement your strategy successfully. So one of the ways is that, of course, if it's something new, we have to give training, and you must give support all the time. Okay, so the employees will be motivated to do it. Next is monitoring progress. I think this will be done in chapter 9. So I'm not going to talk so much about it right now. So let's look at the video. Let's see what we learned from this video: strategy implementation challenges. There are many challenges. Many strategies are good, but they are not successful because failure in implementation. You may have got a good strategy, you may have formulated and select a good strategy, but it's not being implemented successfully. Therefore, the result is actually chaos, loss, not to the company. Now, many strategies fail during implementation. Main reason: a lack of skill, and there's not enough discipline. The lack of skill and discipline is for the lower people, one level below you. Maybe they don't have the skill to implement it, or they are lazy, or there's no discipline to do that. Leaders know how to make plans, but then don't always know how to put the plans into action. So leaders often repeat old mistakes, okay, and don't focus on what actually brings value. So the speaker introduced a thing called implementation compass. We help organizations succeed in putting their plans into action. So there are 8 areas for implementation compass: leadership commitment, employee and commitment, peer communication, and providing enough resources. There's the importance of discipline also. Okay, if the people are not disciplined, if they do something wrong, then they can just get away with it. Evaluate the effectiveness of the strategy implementation in the organization. How do you evaluate? Hang on. To evaluate whether the strategy implementation is done effectively. First, is there any clear alignment with the goals? Does the strategy align with the goals? Is the resource allocation and utilization done correctly? Last, we need to monitor and then we need to change our strategies if there's a need to do so. Okay? So that's how we assess the effectiveness. Now, come to what I want you to do. Examine your own organization plans are put into action to achieve business goals. Examine how your organization plan are put into action to achieve business goals. Okay? That's what I want you to do. Oh, business. No. So now, you may have a long-term objective, 5 years, 10 years, but it's actually put down into annual year. So annual objective. So maintain good policies. If you're a good policy, you maintain good organization policy, confident decision making, you help to resolve your conflict when you're doing things on an annual basis. So you need to make clear annual objective and effective policies. So let's look at the video. Strategic objective defined. Strategic objective are general statements that help connect a vision with yearly goals. So let's say the strategic mission is to increase sales 10% in 5 years. So what would be your yearly goal? So your yearly goal will be 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%, come to 10%. Okay? So it becomes more practical for the annual one to do 2%. Instead of don't do anything, hopefully at the end of 5 years get 10%. That's not good. Okay? So you may have some strong word or clear word for the annual objectives. Okay? Whether clear annual objectives and having effective policy can improve organization performance. So let's look at 7.2. Where is it gone to? Your annual objective should be clear, focused, and provide direction. It should be consistent and serve as a guidance too. And your annual objective, because they are having targets or KPI, you can improve accountability and performance. Okay, so what I want you to do for 7.2 is set annual clear objective. I want you to set for your own company the annual objective and create effective policy to help the organization to achieve its goals. Okay, in order to give to me, just set up as a training for yourself. Now we look at 7.3. Now there will be conflict when you implement because there's a lack of resources or some people are not happy with it, this and that. Okay, so you will have to manage conflict. If you cannot manage conflict within people, then your work environment will be poisonous. Okay, conflict arises because of different opinion, competition for resource, or misunderstanding. Okay, you manage many ways, such as to solve it: negotiation, mediation, talking, negotiation. Okay, so can you stop conflict? No. Why? Because we're human beings. Human beings have their own pride and prejudice. Okay, they have their different opinion. So conflict is there. It's only how you manage that. Okay, that is important. So let's look at the video. Why there's so much conflict at work and how to fix that. So the important thing is how to fix that. Make sure the problem isn't caused by one difficult person. So if there's a difficult person, you have to go and change that difficult person. Ask the right question to the right people to get the full data. Make sure everybody is on the same page. That means communication here is crucial, and listening to people is crucial. Find supporters throughout the organization for your objective. Teach new ways to deal with differences. Okay? So the difference, sometimes we use new tactics to do. So really the impact of effective conflict management on teamwork and marketplace culture. Okay, examine effectiveness, evaluate the impact of effective conflict management. So how do we do that? So 7.3. Improve collaboration, instill a positive workplace culture, and hopefully it will increase productivity. Okay. So let's look at the 7.3 now. No, we're just managing conflict we have done already. We will now look at 7.4, matching structure with strategy. So when the strategy is selected already, sometimes we may need to change our organization structure. Maybe from top down to bottom up, or from bottom up to top down, or maybe move it to a matrix. That's about it. Okay. So which is the best way? Which structure is the best? Depends. Well, depends on the strategy, depending on the circumstances of the company. There's no 100% method. Okay. But the important thing is just to remember that you should have the correct organization structure for the correct strategy. Okay, so for example, if one of the strategy to do this strategy, we need to decentralize. Then you cannot be top down already. Okay, maybe you have to do a matrix strategy. Okay, and so forth. So I'm not going to talk about this one much. Okay, key points. Culture. This is how people work together. Strategy is to get a competitive edge. So the structure of the organization, how the organization will be arranged. That whereby the culture will support the strategy. So we need to do alignment. Okay. Need to understand leaders to do all this to be effective. Okay. Evaluate the impact of aligning a structure. That is obvious, so we can just look at it. Yeah. So evaluate the impact of aligning structure, better goal achievement, efficient resource use, faster decision making. That's the impact of aligning the correct structure. If you are not aligning the correct structure with the strategy, your goal is difficult to get. Your resources will not be used efficiently, and the decision making will be very slow, and sometimes the wrong decision making. Okay. So what I'm going to do for 7.4, examine the importance of aligning organization with strategic goals. So just think for yourself, why is it important to you? Okay. So now we go to 7.5, restructuring, re-engineering, and e-engineering. So sometimes we need to restructure our organization structure or redesign our business process. Let's say, for example, we used to build everything, maybe now some parts we don't build, we buy. Or we stop even building, we support now the whole process. Okay, so it depends. Okay, so this chapter say it depending on your strategy. Some strategy may request you, may need you to do changing. Okay, so or sometimes the things is subcon, you want the strategy may ask you to bring it back to make in-house. Okay, so make and buy is very common in restructuring and re-engineering. Okay. Okay. Importance of effective communication in restructuring. So whenever you do restructuring, people are moving around. You're moving people around. So it's very important to do communication. Very, very important. So examine the importance of re-engineering in your organization. If your organization have done any re-engineering before, so you please examine why is it important to do. Okay. 7.6. Now, resistance to change. When you have a strategy, and that strategy you want to implement, okay, and when you want to implement, some people they don't want to change. They will say your new strategy is not suitable for them or it will not work because they are not proactive. They are defeatist. So they don't want to change. They say, I'm so happy with what I'm doing right now. Why you ask me to do something new? That's the people are like that because they are very comfortable with the current situation. If you ask them to change, they feel unhappy or unstable, or they fear changes. Okay, they fear changes. Let's say, for example, now AI comes in. So when you use AI, you have lesser work. So you need lesser people. So those people, I don't want to use AI because I will be no job soon. So that's called resistant to change. So what the management to do is how to manage it. Maybe you really need to set people how you want to manage it. Or maybe you have to get the existing people to retrain to new job. How to manage it? Very difficult, especially when you're asking people to change job or asking you to sack people. This will be very, very difficult. So very be careful. Okay, very be careful because they may go to the labor office and sue you. Resistance to change. Huh? How to minimize resistance to change? There are several ways. Involving employee early in the process, providing clear communication and creating a supportive environment that change is okay. Okay, so we have. So the impact of effective communication, does it really help you? So let's look at it. Effective communication reduces fear and uncertainty. It increases the employee buy-in agreement. So effective communication also can build trust and morale. So hopefully increasing your communication effectively can reduce the resistance to change. The change which is brought about from your new strategies. Okay. So what I want you to do examine the importance of managing recent change was successful. So just want you to why is it important? This is evaluate and this is examine. They are a little bit different. Okay, so please do accordingly. Create a strategy supporting culture. Easily said than done. Okay. Creating a culture that supports strategy involves establishing shared values and beliefs. That's the meaning. That's it. You must create a shared value. Means the workers and the management are on the same boat. If you have this kind of culture, then it's easy to bring in new strategies. If the management and if the worker think that the management is not supportive of them, it's like I'm the worker, you are the management, we are actually not friends. Management is always taking advantage of us, the worker. If you have this kind of environment, you don't have a good culture. If you don't have a good culture, management come in with a new strategy, workers say no or don't support. Okay? So the importance of creating a culture, I think you can understand. Okay, so I want you to create a new culture. So summary. The nature of strategy implementation involves translating plans into action that employees can follow. Clear communication, effective resource allocation, and regular progress monitoring are very important. Okay. Next, you will expect to see conflict. How you manage it is important. You will also expect to see resistance to change. How you manage is important. Okay. Now we have a closing case study. Nokia employee resistant to change. Now, if you know, Nokia once is the #1 handphone, and they are very successful. They are so successful, and when the idea coming out smartphone, the employee refused to change. Nokia say we are not. Nokia employee say we are not going to have a new phone. We are not going to support the new phones. I mean, we are successful right now, and because of this resistance to change, Nokia now nearly went bankrupt. So Nokia is replaced by smartphone. Right? So let's look at it. When Nokia died, you have Motorola, Ericsson coming in. Then they also very happy. But again, they refuse to change because they cannot bring in the app. So the app people comes in, Apple, Huawei, now the Apple, Huawei, Vivo, they take over. Now you cannot find Nokia, the first level or the second level, Ericsson, cannot find anymore. That is why the system to change is very important to manage. Okay? When the company cannot change, you are dead. So these are model hours, this is the key terms, and these are some of the references. Okay? So we are finished with this chapter. Okay? So I will stop sharing first. I need to download the attendance list. Okay? And also I will now stop recording.